What is going on, baseball and Mets fans? And welcome back to episode number 14 of the Stressing Mets podcast. And I know, shame on me, I have been absent for essentially the whole season thus far. I deeply do apologize about that, but hey, we are back, and that's all that matters. So, it's not like we missed a whole lot. The Mets are in first place, 42, 24, 18 games above 500, MVP seasons from multiple guys in this lineup, best pitching in baseball, and much more. So that's really all you need to know for the first 2.5 months of what we've missed. So continuing as if we've never left, the Mets are heading home from their trip after going out west, going 5-2, which any Mets fan would have signed up for heading in. Splitting a 4-game series against the LA Dodgers 2-2, and then sweeping a 3-game series against the Rockies in Colorado. And throughout this series, we saw dominant pitching, which has been the storyline all season. Pitchers being able to go to that 90 to 100, 105 pitch mark, pushing themselves, throwing quality starts, and really pitchers just getting the job done when they get in jams. As I like to say, they bend but they don't break. And that's really been the storyline for the Mets pitching staff and the Mets bullpen when they've had issues. And we saw that big time these two series in LA and in Colorado. And that is a big reason to why, the Mets went 5-2 in this road trip. So tip of the cap to the Mets. They will go home and play the Washington Nationals, start a new homestand, and they do have one of the best home records in baseball, as I will say. So things are looking pretty good for the Mets at the moment. So getting into the big topic that has been discussed for the Mets and even at the national attention, and that is in Pete Alonso, or some could say MVP. Pete Alonso continued to ascend this past weekend. On Sunday, he hit the Mets record books, hitting 2 home runs in the team's 13-5 blowout against the Colorado Rockies. Those 2 home runs tied and then passed David Wright, Mets legend, for second on the Mets all-time home run list. Alonso is now at 243, passing David Wright at 242, and he is just under 10 away from surpassing Darryl Strawberry for the top spot in franchise history. Pete Alonso had a phenomenal road trip, going 12 for 30 in those games, 5 home runs, 15 ribbies. Tack on the 3 RBIs that Alonso had on June 1st. Fun fact, that puts him on pace for 61 RBIs in June. Well, we don't know if that'll happen. It's still early, but to put it into perspective, the team record for RBIs in the calendar month is 34, and that is by Gary Carter, done in September quite some time ago. So a little factoid there to go that, really goes to show Alonso is hitting the history books on all cylinders. Pete Alonso is also slashing 301, 396, and 594 for a triple slash line of the year thus far, leading MLB in RBIs at 61. He's the first player to hit the 60 RBI plateau this year, and he has gotten, thereby coming in clutch with runners in scoring position. That is something that Alonso really has struggled with for most of his season, especially last year, getting that big hit, hitting with runners in scoring position, getting that productive out, driving in the runs, and really Alonso is the best player on this team statistically and one of the best in Major League Baseball when it comes to hitting with runners in scoring position. Some other players, on the other hand, that's a story for another day, but we're talking about Pete Alonso right now and how elite he has been when it comes to hitting with runners and scoring position. And, you look at the underlying numbers of Alonso, and it's no fluke. I mean, he's in the 97th percentile and higher, and pretty much xWOBA, XBA, expected slugging, all the expected stats, and then, his average exit velocity, 94.8 miles per hour, barrel percentage, hard hit percentage, and all those are in the 96th percentile and higher. So Pete Alonso, tip of the cap to him. He's having a phenomenal season. You could also look at Francisco Lindor, who deserves an honorable mention. He has a triple slash line of 283, 354, and 842, 14 home runs, 38 ribbies, 13 stolen base, and a gold glove at the shortstop position. Other players, Brandon Nimmo, Juan Soto are really looking good. Jeff McNeil, tip of the cap to him. Who would have thought that he'd have an 888 sub 250 average coming mid-June? McNeil has really been very important to this lineup, and if he could hit, I mean, this is a dangerous 1 through 5. McNeil ditching that slap contact mentality and really focusing more on his bat speed and really just pulling the ball, driving the ball. And that's something that really has been a success for McNeil this year, and we saw at the end of it last year. So tip of the cap to him. So the offense is doing their job. Hitting with runners in scoring position is a worry, but like I said, that's a story for another day. But let's get into the other side of the game, and that is in pitching, right? Heading into the season, the Mets' biggest weakness on paper was their starting rotation. Going into the season without Sean Manaea due to an oblique strain and without Frankie Montas, who had a lat strain, the rotation seemed to really be a worry. Flash forward to now in June, the Mets are riding high. They're, like I said, first place in the NL East, up by 4 games. Their rotation, which doesn't even have Manaea and Montas, is one of the reasons that they're off to a phenomenal start. And 4 of the starting pitchers in the rotation have a sub 3.0 ERA, thus far. So it really goes to show you that the Mets haven't seen this much success from their rotation in a long time. Entering today, Senga, Peterson, Canning, and Clay Holmes all have an ERA under 3 at the 65-game mark of the regular season. To put it into perspective, the last time that happened was in 1985, and it's when you had Doc Gooden, Ron Darling, Sid Fernandez, and Ed Lynch, who really all had pretty good careers, if you could argue. But looking at Senga and Peterson having great starts to the campaign is really not a surprise. I guess considering Senga's replicating the great rookie season he had in 2023. He was hurt all of last year, but Senga's 1.59 ERA in 12 starts is the best in the National League. Peterson is showcasing what we saw last year, that, it's no fluke. His slider's elite, and if he can pound the strike zone and find command of the strike zone and throw strikes, he is an elite pitcher. Canning and Holmes are really a surprise for the Mets in 2025, implementing new pitches. We've seen that kick change that they've been working on this offseason with Jeremy Hefner. You look at Canning, he had a rough career with the Angels. He opted to sign with the Mets on this short 1-year deal, and it's paid off. He's pitched 2.90 ERA, 59 innings, 57 strikeouts, and a whip just shy of 1.3. So Canning's been good. Biggest surprise is Clay Holmes. A lot of people had worries about Clay Holmes. A bullpen arm turning into a starter. People were worrying coming June, July. How would the innings be for him? Would he be able to go 6-7 innings every other 5th day? And yeah, that really hasn't been a concern. You saw against the Rockies, he pitched great. And after that Rocky start, he's now 7-2 in 13 starts with a 2.95 ERA, 65 strikeouts, and he already has a career high in innings at 73.1. So you really got to give the cap to Clay Holmes. I mean, really being a phenomenal guy to turn into a starter. And we've seen it around MLB with a lot of other guys, Michael King, Seth Lugo, 2 other names just to throw out there. But Clay Holmes can be that guy. We'll see how he continues to progress coming June, July, and the dog days of summer. But right now, Clay Holmes, along with this rotation, really has their foot on the pedal, and they're not taking it off. As the season progresses, we're really going to have to hope and see how great this rotation is going to become, because you're going to get Manaea back. You're going to get Montas back. And, they're almost ready for their, eagerly anticipated season debut. So you are very excited to see that. And, the pitching staff pitching this well, to me, it doesn't come to a surprise. A lot of people going into this season were saying, oh, but Hayden, the rotation, it's not strong on paper. It doesn't look good. Griffith Canning, LOL. Clay Holmes, LOL. Who's your ace? And, you really could just sit here and say, well, looks like David Stearns did his classic David Stearns, getting these guys who historically maybe didn't have the fanciest careers thus far. Griffith Canning could be one. And turning them into elite starters. Arguably aces on a couple other teams based on the numbers they're putting up. And That's what David Stearns does, and that's what we've been seeing. We've been seeing this rotation pay off. You look at this Mets rotation. Kodai Senga, yeah, you could argue he's the ace, and he's pitching like it. Canning, he's been great. Holmes, he's been great. Peterson, he's been great. And, you go to that fifth guy, McGill, he's had his ups and downs. But if the worst is going to be a sub 380, 390 ERA, I'll take that any day of the week. Yeah, Paul Blackburn slotting into that long reliever 6 start. The bullpen's been great. Edwin Diaz, he's looking like 2022 Diaz all over again. He had a phenomenal month of May, great June. Reed Garrett's been phenomenal in the setup man role. That high leverage pitcher to come in and get out of those jams. The rotation and the bullpen have really been successful this whole season thus far. So fingers crossed, hopefully the Mets can continue to get the job done, keep their foot on the gas pedal. And right now, the Mets have the best pitching staff in baseball, statistically based on ERA, and they're getting the job done. They're going out there, they're throwing quality starts. A statistic that I saw yesterday when watching the SNY postgame show was that no starter thus far has given up 4 or more runs in a start, minus Blake Tidwell in that St. Louis start, but that was just kind of a last-minute call-up type thing, doubleheader. Otherwise, really, all the other starts, the Mets pitching staff starters have only given up 3 or less runs, so quality starts. And, pitching wins championships, and if you're throwing quality starts, you give your offense a chance. So you really like what you are seeing off this Mets team right now, and we saw a lot of it in LA, a lot of it in Colorado. And, now the Mets are going to go home to a nice homestand. The Mets are going to go out there. They're going to play the Washington Nationals, a team who's been having a decent season. They've been in a little offensive ruck lately, the Nationals. So they'll play 3 games against them and then a 3-game set against the Tampa Bay Rays. So 6-game homestand. So we'll see how the Mets can share. We're going to have to watch a couple things, both good and bad. Starting off with the good, watching guys like Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, Ronnie Mauricio, who's been pretty hot as of lately. Going 5 for 11 in the 3-game sweep. He's going to be a good guy to watch. Starting pitching from Kodai Senga. So it's really going to be good to watch that. We'll see how they could hit with runners in scoring position. They are going to be facing the Nationals' top frontline pitching. Mackenzie Gore, they're going to have to go up against him. The southpaw, he's been having a great season, leader in strikeouts. So we will have to see how the Mets can share. But overall, they've been great. They have one of the best home records in baseball, and they'll go into this series 42-24. They are 24-7 at home. So we're going to have to see. The Mets are rocking it right now. Vibes are good. Morale is high. But yeah, and that's all we can say for today's podcast. So I do appreciate everybody for tuning in. As always, feel free to give this video a like, comment, subscribe. If you can, turn on those post notifications. Let me know your thoughts, comments, all that stuff down below. And yeah, I'd be very interested to hear. As always, LFGM, let's go Mets. Till next time, baseball fans, see ya.